call on this computer. Okay, so as I said, what we're going to do is we're going to have a little run through of your end of term 1 assessment. We're going to look at some of the things that are going to help you prepare for your exam, and we're going to go through the type of questions you will have in your exam, and it will give you tips and tricks on how to answer these questions so you are getting the maximum amount of points for the least amount of words written. Okay, so I've got the pen in, that's why. 1 second. Okay, so what is in my exam? Your exam is split into 4 different sections. Okay, section 1 is a multiple choice question. 1 moment. Yes, miss? Hang on, I'm just recording here. 1 second, let me pause it.
Recording in progress.
Okay, so like I said, it's split into 4 different sections. Section A is a multiple choice questions. You will have 5 of these multiple choice questions. Okay. When you're answering these, if you get it incorrect, so if you look through and you read the question and you think, oh, it's A, you're going to put like a little cross through A because that's the one you, or like a tick or whatever. Okay. And then if you think, oh, actually, no, I changed my mind, it makes it very, very difficult when we've got lots of like scribbling out and trying to work out which one it is. If you've got it incorrect, just put a line through the one that you ticked initially, okay, and then go to the next one and then tick or cross the original one. Don't be creating lots of mess on the paper. Yes, Leif, what's your question?
What's if you want to go back to the original one that you crossed?
If you want to go back to the original one that you crossed, so say if you thought it was A, then you think it's D, but you want to go back to A. I would say, I think the answer is A, then draw an arrow, just write something on there to make it clear on what you think it is. Okay. Section B is short answer questions. So these are going to be questions that require no more than a sentence or 2. We're not asking for paragraphs of writing, okay? It's going to give you some form of identification or description on something, okay? Yes, Yusuf. How many questions are in the short answer? I don't know exact questions, but it's worth 9 marks, okay? And then I'm going to kind of go into the types of question it's going to be later on and kind of explain like what to have a little look for. Okay. Now, yes, Leif.
Multiple choice is 5 marks.
5 marks, yes. So short answer is 9 marks. And then you have got a source analysis section. You are going to be given 2 sources. Now, remember, a source is a historical piece of evidence that is created at the time we are studying. Okay, so it's what we would have commonly referred to as a primary source document. It is created at the time we are studying. Now, this source analysis is going to ask, there's 2 sources. Each source analysis is worth 2 marks each. Okay, so that's 4 marks. And then at the end of each source, it's going to ask you a comparison question between the 2 sources. Now, essentially, at this, at year 8, your source analysis, a little bit like your formative, is kind of a comprehension task. Okay, I'm not actually asking you to make any inferences just yet. You know, I might say, you might read through the source and I might say to you, identify one feeling this person might have. And you have to read through and find out what feeling they are conveying. And that will be part A. And the part B of the question is always going to ask you to select the evidence to support it. So if it says to you, pick out a quote, you are literally going to take a little bit of the source and just rewrite it underneath. Okay, that is to support what you have said in your previous bit. Okay, and then your comparison answer you are going to have to compare the two sources, and it's going to give you a topic. Okay? So if I said to you, you know, compare the two sources on how they describe what life was like for a slave, let's say, for example, you know, you would say, and then you have to make sure we use evidence from the source as well. So for the 2 marks, you need to make sure you're mentioning both sources and make that comparison. But you can't say something along the lines of, but the comparison has to be a similar topic. So one could say, you know, they were treated really well. One said they're not treated very well, because that's that both of those are talking about their treatment. One could say, you know, they are, you know, they don't have to work as long and they get fair housing, whereas another one says that they don't. Yes, Yusuf.
So, can give you a comparison between, like, before.
When you're when you're doing the comparison, you're comparing the two sources. So source A and source B, or source 1 and source 2, you're going to compare whatever the questions asked you about the sources. So you need to compare those two sources, whether you're looking at similarity or difference, okay? So you are essentially linking it to our historical concepts. And look at our display board. Can you write like a historian? It's asking you to compare similarity and difference. That's what it's asking you to do. So section C is out of 6 marks altogether. Yes, Leif.
So I get 2 paragraphs.
No, it's not even a paragraph. It's just 1 line.
So the source is going to be 1 line.
No, sorry. The source will be, the source will be about a paragraph to read. The first bit will tell you who wrote it, when it was published. You know, it might give you a bit of background information. And remember, that's called the provenance of the source. And that will be underlined. And then the actual source will be in quotation marks for both of them. Okay? So then label source 1 and source 2. Okay. Then you don't need to revise for your source bit, no, because you will be given the information there. Obviously, around the topic it's talking about, you need to revise what we've studied, because it will touch on something that we've studied. Now, then section 4 is an extended writing question. And this is the part that I would like you to really focus in on, because this is worth 10 marks. It is 1 question. It is a 10-mark question, essentially. Okay? And it requires quite a bit of writing involved. And I'm going to get into that towards the end. I'm going to explain how to answer that. I'm not going to answer questions on that just yet. So total marks, your assessment will be out of 30 marks. You will have 60 minutes to complete it. So that gives you roughly 2 minutes per mark, so use them wisely. Okay, so for example, the multiple choice section, you've got 5 questions. You essentially have 10 minutes to answer that. Do we need 10 minutes to tick 5 boxes? No, we don't. So if you want to, you can use that time elsewhere, but keep an eye on the time when you're writing your answers. Okay, some little tips and tricks I've got for you here. Read each question carefully and what it asks, and ask yourself, what does it want me to do? And we're going to get a little bit onto that in a moment when we're looking at the command words that we spoke about last lesson. Like, what is it asking us to do? Yes, Mohammed. This is going to be posted on your things. You don't have to. You can just write down the things that I'm saying if you need to. You need to look for the number of marks awarded for it and go from there. So, for example, if a question is worth 3 marks, you need to write down at least 3 points. Okay? So, I'm going to give you an example of this. One of your questions is worth, in the short answer section, is worth 3 marks. But it's asking you to identify 2 things. Okay? And then it's giving you a list of 3 aspects, okay? Sounds a bit confusing, I know. But, so if it's saying identify 2 and it's worth 3 marks, we're going to do 2 times 3, which is 6, okay? So we need to have be using our math as well at the same time and look at what it's asking us to do. If it says to us, describe 2 reasons, but it's worth 4 marks, how many things do we actually have to write down? 4, yeah, around 4. So our 2 reasons, okay? So we're going to do point evidence, but we'll get into that in a moment. And one thing I've noticed, Year 8, especially last year in Year 7, for some of you that I did teach, and with our formative assessments, I do not want any generic answers. They need to be historically accurate answers. So if I'm asking you, you know, what was a reason for the slave trade? If things are written down like, because people were mean, you know what, you're right. People were mean back in the day, but is that a historically accurate answer? No, it's not. We need to have a little think about what were some of the reasons for the slave trade. So we're going to look at things like economic advantage, expanding world power, trade. I want specific historical answers. It's like last year when we did the Black Death, and you know, we kept getting the same thing over and over again, like, oh, people got ill, people get ill. Yes, I know they did, but can you tell me the specific history behind it? Okay, yes, Yusuf.
What was the actual reason the slave trade started?
Well, then maybe you need to make a note of that, and then you can go look at that in your revision. Okay. Then the last thing, in your source analysis, like I said, read the source carefully. Make sure you understand what it is saying. This is essentially a comprehension task. If I'm asking you what is the emotion of the person that they're describing, if you don't understand the source, you can't tell me that emotion. Okay? Now, command words. We looked at this, or I mentioned to my class specifically the other week what command words are. And we said that a command word was, it tells us what to do. Okay? That is essentially what a command word is. It's telling us what we need to do. So, the word identify, oops, did not want that to happen. Yeah. Okay, to tell us what we want to do. So the word identify, the best way I can explain it to you is you have your PEEL chain, point, evidence, explain, link. Your identify is the point. You are making a point. So if I said to you, identify what I have drawn on the board. If we were to answer this in a full sentence, we would say, Miss Thompson has drawn a stick man on the board. That would be our point. We are identifying something. We are making a point. So if I said to you, identify the goods that were traded at each point in the triangular trades, okay, you would say things like gold, weapons, tobacco, sugar, people, slaves, okay? That is you identifying. So it's you are simply making a point, okay? Now, if I said to you identify 2 reasons, it's still the same thing. So if I said to you identify 2 reasons for ... and the answer was worth 2 marks, how many things are we going to identify? 2, fantastic. Because the process of identification is generally only worth 1 mark, okay? That is very, very important. Identifying something is worth 1 mark, hence why it is the point in our PEEL paragraph. Now, we can write in full sentences when we still do this. It's good to get into the practice of writing in full sentences, but we do not need to be writing lots and lots and lots and lots. Okay? Any questions on identification? Yusuf, yes.
So the question becomes identify one thing and it comes for 2 marks.
you'll never get a question that asks you to identify one thing and will be worth 2 marks. Okay, because you can't give, so that's why we need to check when we're writing our answers. That's why I said to you in the tips and tricks, check the amount of marks linked to the question. Okay, and when I write these assessments, I make sure that the command words and what it wants you to do is linked with the marking. Okay, any questions on this? Let's move on to our next one, which is describe. So we know a command word is telling us what to do. So it's asking you to describe. Now, the best example I've got for you, once again, is we look back at our peel paragraph and our describe are these two. It is our points and it is our evidence. So you need to identify the answer to the question and give some description. Okay, this can be given knowledge about whatever it is. You can maybe put in a statistic if there's a statistic linked to it. You can give some examples of what happened in the event if it's asking about that. But you need to essentially, when you're asked to describe something, it's asking you to give details. So, once again, a very poor drawing is going to come up on the board and I'm going to use my analogy. No, I'm going to draw. I did not take GCSE art, by the way. What is it? Yes, okay. So if I'm going to ask you to identify the object, which is our first step, okay, it is a tissue box. Now, then the second step is asking you to describe it, but I don't have one in front of me, so I'm going to use the one that the school provides us. Have a little look at the camera just so you can check out the tissue box. Give me some descriptions about this tissue box, okay? Yusuf, give me one description.
This is a green tissue box.
So it's green, fantastic. That's one thing, part of the description. Yeah, go on. The brand is Fair, fantastic. Yes? Has what? Okay, yes, it's got a mix of colours. What's it made out of? Fantastic, it's made out of cardboard.
But you can't really identify its made of cardboard if it is in a picture.
Yeah, that's very good. Well done. I get that. Right, so we've got our tissue box. So, a describe question. If you're going to describe one thing, how many marks is it going to be worth? 2. Describing one thing is going to be worth 2 marks, okay? Because you get 1 mark for your identification and you get 1 mark for giving your evidence, okay? So if I said to you, describe one reason why the slave trade ended, okay? You would tell me one reason and give me details about that reason, okay? If I said that would be worth 2 marks. But if I said to you, for example, describe 2 reasons, ... How many marks would that question be out of? 4. Fantastic. Okay, and that is what you will have in your assessment. You are given a question and it's asking you to describe 2 reasons. And you have to think of your peel chain. You're doing point, evidence, point, evidence. That's all you're going to do. So how many sentences really do we need for that? 4 sentences, yeah. You don't need a lot, guys, okay? Do we all understand our describe question? Okie dokie. Let's move on to our explain. So once again, what does the word explain actually mean? Does anyone know? Yes.
To explain is to show why something happens.
Fantastic. You've used one of my favorite words there. Why? When you're going to explain something, you essentially say why. So you give reasons why. And the best way you know that you have answered your question is when you're writing, once you finish your sentence, if you say to yourself what at the end of your sentence, if you can still continue essentially explaining, you haven't fully explained yet. Okay, now I would play a whole game where we start discussing something and I keep going why until you run out of things to say. But unfortunately, we've only got 10 minutes left and I want to move on. Okay, but that's what it is. And when we think of our appeal chain, point, evidence, explain, link, it is all 4 of them. Okay, now this is very important because we are very good at the point, we are very good at the explain, but we are not very good, the evidence, but we are not very good at the explain. Because when I say why, and I'm saying give reasons, we need to make sure we are linking this to the question. And this is another example where we need to make sure we are explaining it historically. You know, I don't want to hear things like, oh, because I didn't have the technology like mobile phones back then. No, you know, because they didn't have, you know, human rights didn't exist back then. No. Okay. What have we learned in lesson about empire and slavery that you can answer that question? So the question is essentially an inquiry. Okay. If you're given a question and you're asked to explain, you know, explain what caused the slave trade to end, you know, you give me your point. You can talk about campaigners. You give me examples of what the campaigners did. And then you need to explain how that campaigning led to the end of slave trades. This is the critical thinking part of our question, okay? And this is what's going to separate those of you who are grade 3, grade 4, from those of you who are grade 6, 7, even 8 or 9. Is because can you give me a detailed explanation? So essentially, you need to make sure that your question is answered. What I don't want to see is you make a point, you give me some evidence, and then you start explaining something else. Okay? All 4 of these steps need to link. So if you say to me, one reason the slave trade ended was because of campaigners, you know, you could say they went all over the country with examples of the chains to show people the conditions that they were in. And then you start talking about the moral argument of, you know, people believed it was morally wrong. You've mixed your points there, guys. Okay, we need to make sure that we stick to one point in our paragraph. We're not going to be swapping and changing what it is we're doing. So in this explain bit, you need to make sure you've answered your question, okay, and you're explaining your evidence. So you've given me evidence. You need to explain why that backs up what you're saying. Okay, so if we're talking about campaigners and they're going around, you know, let's say Britain with the chains that the slaves wear on the ships, why did that end slavery? Why did waving some, you know, chains and cuffs in people's faces, why did that make slavery get ended? That's what we need to be thinking about. Now, there's a nice little way we can do that. We can use the analogy of tact. And these are some sentence starters you can use. And it is this means that. So this is you then explaining your evidence. As a result, okay, this is you As a result, this is you writing like a historian, okay? You're linking it to our concepts in history, like change, continuity, cause, consequence, and then you can use your therefore. ... And that also can take you back to the link. So these are some really important things. So for me, when I was your age, I used to revise sentence starters. Therefore, it's just up there on the board, Mohammed, in the orange, the bottom one. Okay?
Which box is that?
So in your paper, you don't actually have a question that asks you to explain something on your own, because you will need to write your peel paragraphs when it comes to this, your extended writing section. Now, this is worth 1/3 of the whole paper, because this question is going to be worth 10 marks. It's almost like a little mini essay you're going to be writing, okay? And it's going to be worth 10 marks, so you should have about 20 minutes to answer it, which is a lot of time. Now, this question requires you to write 3 peel paragraphs and 1 mini conclusion, okay? And you're given 1 question. Now, this type of question, you will be given a statement. Any kind of statement, okay? And then you will be asked, how far do you agree with it? And then it will say, what do you reckon it's going to ask you to do next? Explain your answer, okay? And that is why you need to be able to write peel paragraphs, because you are essentially in this answer writing 3 peel paragraphs. Now, this question, I'll give you a little tip and hint. This question is going to be based on the independence movements. Okay, so that lesson you had about all of them, I suggest you go through and revise them. Because it's got 3 peel paragraphs, the question will say, explain your answer using examples from X, Y, and Z. So it's going to give you 3 of the independence movements that it wants you to talk about. So you have to be prepared to write a peel paragraph about those 3. But you need to make sure it links to the statement. So, for example, if you read this statement, it's an opinion-based question. So everyone's is going to be different. So if you read this and you think to yourself, I don't agree with that, okay, you can disagree with it. Now, obviously, I say you're going to be writing paragraphs. I can't tell you specifically what you're going to be writing in the paragraph, because I can't tell you what the statement is going to say. But let's give it a completely different analogy. What if I gave you a statement that said, the best fast food restaurant in the world is McDonald's. Wait, stop, please. We haven't got time. So if I said the best fast food restaurant in the world is McDonald's, how far do you agree with this statement? Explain your answer using McDonald's, KFC, and Pizza Hut. Okay? Listen. You would need to make sure that you wrote a peel paragraph on McDonald's, a peel paragraph on KFC, and a peel paragraph on Pizza Hut. But each one of them needs to be linked to the idea that they are either the best or they're not the best. So if you agree with it, you would say McDonald's is the best one. And then you would say, however, Pizza Hut, KFC are not. If you disagreed with it though, you would say, even though McDonald's is okay, I don't think it's the best one. And these are the reasons why. So give me evidence why you don't think so. And then you give me the reasons why. Hang on, can we wait because of the volume, please? And you give me reasons why you think the other ones are the best. So that's your 3 peel paragraphs. Then, once you've done that, I said you need to write a mini conclusion. That is essentially going to be you summing up your whole answer in a mini conclusion. Now, because we haven't practiced these, okay, I haven't got a massive criteria for what it is, but the mini conclusion is going to be worth about 1 mark. Okay? Shh, please. Now, I'm going to write quickly down here in the corner what the grading is for this. And I know I appreciate break time's about to happen, but I want to get this ended without too much noise going on in the background. That's not good. Okay?
Does